Alright, this is a quick walkthrough on how to do the monitor mount part. It's actually the more complex, the lower clamp feature of the monitor mount. This is the more challenging of the two pieces. The top piece is similar, but actually a little bit simpler. But I'm going to step through the more complex one with you and see if you can do the simpler one on your own. So you'll need to refer to this drawing for this part that's on your Google Classroom. If you come here, 3D printer monitor count, it's the lower clamp part right here. So here we go. Got my SolidWorks, doing a new part. We want to make sure that we are in inch pound seconds right there. So with this drawing here, I'm decided again to look at this thing from its front view. So it's going to be this front view here. I'm going to end up sketching this whole profile right there and extrude that out. So from front plane, we can make it visible if we want to. I'm going to click on front plane. I do extrude boss base. That's ultimately what it's going to be. And on this one, I'm again going to start. It may make sense actually to do this symmetric about the center point here because there's some symmetry to this part as well. So I'm actually going to start this one out by doing a center line. That's how it's starting here. And I'm going to do, we can do a center line up vertically like this. I'm going to take advantage of that a little bit anyway. And then we are going to do a normal line. I'm just going to start making the profile outline here to the part. It's just going to be kind of a shape like that. See those dashed lines as they come up as I move along? That means that it's implying that those lines are horizontal or aligned to each other. If I come over that point there and then come back, see how that's then kind of snapping in line with that point there. So I like that right there. Just that shape all around. Notice that I didn't spend too much time actually smart dimensioning or changing any parameters or anything like this in here. You could change that value, but I didn't worry about that. Control Z, undo that. Okay, hit escape here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add relations here and make these things, because in this part here, it is actually symmetric about this center line. So I'm going to take the time to make those relationships first. So the way that I can do that, click on this vertical line here, so hit escape. Notice nothing is actually highlighted right now yet. Click there, selected vertical line 1, back there, it happened to be called, oops, but I selected the wrong thing. I wanted the line, not the point. So notice that it's right here, what's showing up as selected. It's that point right there. I didn't want that, so I'm coming back over here, left clicking on delete. If I were to do something like that, that's how I recover. But what I did want to do is I wanted to pick that vertical line right there. So a line and a line. And one last line, that center line. Okay, that center line I can actually make this thing symmetric. That's the symbol right there for symmetric. There, there, and there. And again, there's going to be, I'm going to hit the escape key to get out of that. That line, and this line. I want to make symmetric. Cool. Now I'm going to kind of breeze, I'm going to breeze through this next part a little bit more now, because I'm going to expect that you're a little bit more comfortable with smart dimensioning. So I'm going to be smart dimensioning this quickly through and showing all the dimensions that I'm going to smart dimension out here. There, there, there. That is 2.125. The overall height. This one you have to be careful. This value right here is actually 0.625. Not this other. There's a 0.645 value that's there. That's not that right there. Not the distance between those two specific lines. And this value right here is going to be 2 inches. Okay, so those are locked in. And then the other thing that we're going to need to do, so that's still moving around, we're actually going to make a relationship between this bottom line, the control key, and that point right there. Make those at midpoint. So notice how just about everything blacked out. Oop. As I'm clicking and dragging here. Guess what? There's one more relationship that I'm going to want to make. Notice how this line here and this line here. It's kind of implied in the drawing. But this 1/4 of an inch, there's going to end up being a 1/4 of an inch dimension here. But that line segment right there, and that little line segment right there, are actually what are called collinear to each other. So this is a crafty way. I could do it this way potentially. Smart dimension here, smart dimension there, change that to 0.25, and then this thing's still free to float. Uh-oh, then I'd have to smart dimension it again like this. Okay. Yeah, that could be okay, but really that's one extra dimension you'd have to maintain in the long term. And if you know, design intent-wise, that those two faces are always going to be aligned to each other, setting up a relationship is actually going to be a little bit better. So I've dimensioned that right there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this line there, collinear. Alright, so now if I came back in here and changed this smart dimension value to be, I don't know, 0.350, oh, it all moves together now. Whereas it didn't do that before. Because these two entities are now always supposed to be collinear to each other. Okay, so now there is one more feature that we could do here, either in this sketch, and I'll show you how to do it inside of the sketch, or we could add this fillet after the fact. Is one way better than the other? Maybe yes, maybe no, depending on the situation. But I'll just show you here now that we can actually use a sketch fillet. And it needs to fillet, it's asking you, but the actual value of the radius of the fillet is this value, 0.1875. And we're going to do that, so 0.1875 or 3/16. And now it's asking you the entities to fillet. Click on that line and that line, and that line. Check. Now that fillets those features right there. There's one last feature we can do on this part, and it is this circular cutout feature. So you could do that as a cut later, potentially if you wanted to. But again, for simplicity's sake of not having to add yet one more feature into the model, I'm actually going to make this integral part of the sketch. So I want to be careful here. It'd be kind of a mistake if I started my circular sketch right here. Well, actually maybe it wouldn't be. It could actually work, but we're going to do this in a couple different ways. So if I click on that endpoint right there, it gives an anchor point for that circle. But that thing still can move up and down. You could have, however, done it this way where it was just somewhere on the line. There. That would have potentially also been okay, but oops, I did actually make a mistake when I did that there. Then I click on that. That's a tangent relationship that I don't necessarily want, because now that that's tangent, that keeps that there. So I wouldn't want that. You could just kind of have dropped that. Again, a relationship you wouldn't want is if you dragged and dropped that circle, or started that circle from that point there. That now makes it, if I were to change it's always going to be on that point, which it isn't actually going to be. It's going to be slightly off of that edge. So I can again come back and delete that. That's a relationship I didn't truly want. Back to where I originally dropped it, at the end point of that, this could actually work okay. Smart dimension. We want the circumference. Click on the circumference to dimension the diameter of the circle. It's actually, in this case, called out as a radius. So it's 0.5285. That's the radius value though, but this is going to be programming in the diameter. So this is also actually calculator though in this dialog box. So if I just multiply that value by 2, that there would actually, the 1.06 would actually be twice the radius value, giving the diameter. And the other thing now that I'm going to have to dimension is going to be this center line itself, and that is going to be 0.645, which then controls the endpoint. So notice that this circle isn't exactly on the line right there. It's off by a small amount. And this comes into the function of the part later. But now we've got this circle here intersecting the other part that I drew. So to handle this now, I'm actually going to trim away entities. So you've got a couple other ways, couple things to do here in trim. You can try trim to closest, where you would do that, and let's see the segment that's orange, it just trimmed that away. Trim that away. That works pretty well. Or there's this power trim function that if I click and left mouse hold, dragging that across, just deleted that whole segment up to both those over there. So that worked pretty well too. Excellent. So that actually is my profile that I would want to make. I exit the sketch here. It's going to launch into the extrude dialog box, the parameters. On this one, this is going to be extruded 3/8, 0.375 inches thick. And you could choose to go the other direction if you wanted as well. But I like typing in always into my keyboard. I don't use this slider so much to actually finish out the dimension because it just takes too long to actually get it where I want. So 0.375 is the thickness of the part. Check. There we go. There's that feature. Now we're coming back to Hole Wizard for these other parts, or the other features on this part. So I'm going to need to do two different hole feature functions, or excuse me, Hole Wizard. So if you click on Hole Wizard again and it doesn't work, and the other video for the base mount I talked more about how to set that up. So you'll have to refer back to those videos for that. But here now, if I do, I'm going to be looking at my top plane here. Which ones do we want to do first? Let's do the counterbores first on this one, because we did threaded features in the last part. So this is going to be a counterbore feature. I'm clicking on that. ANSI inch type. Now here's what we're going to have to select. It was called out to be for a socket head cap screw. And under type here, I've got a binding head cap screw selected. But I want to come down here to socket head cap screw to select that. And hole size now, it's going to be a number 10 size. And where that was called out here is that on the drawing. Alright, so number 10 socket head cap screw, normal fit. We'll see how this does. We're probably going to have to change a little bit this here because Mr. Foreman, I didn't do the best job of designing this part initially, but we'll see how it goes. So sketch. Oops, we're in position right now. So it's going to be asking you to select a face on which to put the holes. And in this case, it's going to be on this face right here. It's also going to be on that other face there, but they're in the same plane. So, oops, it's coming already to want to allow me to put in a point here somewhere. But I'm actually going to do this first. I'm going to do some construction geometry. Center line. From that center line, midpoint to midpoint. I double clicked to get out, and then I'm also going to do a line from holding down Control and 8 on my keyboard to go to normal view, and again from the midpoint to the midpoint here to have another center line. Alright, the reason I'm doing that is that's some construction geometry to help me out on where to place these points. So now this is going to make my life easier. I'm going to place that point on that line, coincident on that line, and that one there. If I hold down if I hit escape to get out of that, I hold the Control key, and both those points are selected. I'm going to hold the Control key and do that. I'm going to make those points symmetric to each other, because again, that's implied from the drawing. Alright, so we got those placed symmetric. Now what we want to do is smart dimension these. Okay. Because as you notice actually in the drawing, I didn't tell you how far away from the edge these holes were placed. It's implied rather, that these holes are actually symmetric about that center line. Here we go. So that dimension actually needs to be 2.713. Check. Alright. Now, this is kind of a shoddy design on my part. That at this point is lined up. That's looking good enough. I'm going to click check here, and we're going to see what happens. Oops. Rebuild errors. unable to create this feature because it would result in zero thickness geometry is probably what you're going to get when we do this. Well, what that means is that this counter, this thing called a counter bore up here, as you can see, is actually coming like up to almost exact tangency on this hole. Right? So how we can fix this, one, Mr. Foreman should have come up with a better design in making this part slightly thicker, but we'll roll with it and we can show you how to adjust. It's kind of an indicator that things didn't go quite so smart in the design. So we got show custom sizing to click on here. Right? And now what you can do with this is you can actually adjust the diameters of this counter bore. And I'm just trying to do this cosmetically. This design is kind of a cosmetic thing for you guys right now, just seeing that you guys can produce this. So I wouldn't normally recommend doing this fix if you're actually designing parts for yourself for something to function. But for our intention here, I changed that to 0.350 on that diameter. So again here, if I need to edit anything, edit feature back in there, I adjusted that show custom sizing. That was this second dimension down here. Counter bore diameter I altered to be 0.350. That's how I fixed that. So now I've got that counter bore feature. Again, a design kind of oops or not such a good thing here for that I did. Technically the way that it's modeled is got this little hang-on feature here based off of this based off of this fillet. If that's really bugging you and you don't like how that looks, if you click back on this, I could actually come back and alter this diameter. And again, this is a design for manufacturability or thing we can talk about more later. If I change that value to be 1.75, say right there, that actually makes it look a little bit nicer where the fillet comes back. Okay, so whether that's practical machine out or not at that diameter, it's a different story for another day. But right there, we've got up to that point. Now I'm going to see if you can follow through and figure out. I'm not going to give as much explanation, but see if you can follow along with how I do these threaded features here. Okay. Again, we're going to Hole Wizard. I could even select that face to start and then click on Hole Wizard. Now what we need is a threaded feature. Custom sizing. I'm going to cancel that. I don't want custom sizing now. Click on that. So 1032 is what we're looking for. A threaded feature. Instead of bottoming tapped hole. Come in here to positions. So again here, what I'm actually going to do is construction geometry, center line from there to there, another center line, double click, center line to the midpoint of that, and then control 8 rather, to get on this. Make sure that we're going through midpoint there. Actually want that. It's critical to make sure that with what I'm trying to do right now, no, actually it's not. Strike that. Not super critical, but making sure that those nice and tidy on there. And now doing my point there to there. I'm going to do a relationship. Symmetric, point, center line, symmetric. Smart dimension. That value is supposed to be 1.528 inches. Okay. All right, notice now I come back to this type here. These are going through the whole thing. I don't really need all that. It was calling out the thread. We come down here. We've got this end condition. We're going to do blind in this case. So I actually only called out 300 thousandths depth of thread. So 2 times diameter. And we could even leave that at that value. And then 0.54. Reduce that back a little bit. Like, yeah, we don't want to reduce it by too much. We'll make that just 0.5. So 1/2 inch deep. Okay. Because we need enough space to get a tab, the thing that actually threads this, down inside of there. If I click check there, we've actually got our part there. If I change the view, whoops, if I change this to hidden line shown, and see that we've actually got these two holes and counterbores. And that is all you need for this part. That's actually done. Cool.